In today's video, we are going to do a review of this LTD guitar. Now, we're not going to do a regular review about the way the guitar sounds and plays and feels and looks, because this is a project for the channel. We're going to try to see what we can do out of this guitar. And as you probably can see, it does not have any pickups, so I can't play the guitar for you. So in this video, we're just going to talk about the Relic. I'm going to do a sort of Relic review of this guitar. But if you're interested in what I think about it, how it feels and stuff like that, I can at least tell you that it feels really nice. So it's a good guitar, and actually I think that it feels better than most Harley Bentons, at least any of the Harley Bentons I've ever played. But take that with a grain of salt, because I bought this guitar secondhand, and I can see that whoever had this guitar before me has fiddled around a little bit and changed things around and fixed the fret a little bit, and so I can't do a completely honest review of the guitar. But it feels nice and I like it, especially the neck has a very comfortable feel to it. But as someone who has reliced a lot of guitars and have been photographing a lot of reliced guitars and old guitars that have been, played and worn by time, and who has actually played and worn at least one guitar without relicking it, I feel like I know enough about guitars to talk about what looks good and what doesn't look good. Obviously, if you have one of these guitars and you like the way it looks, I'm absolutely not trying to use this as some sort of like, this is how you're not supposed to do it or anything like that. This is just sort of a fun video. Hopefully no one takes it too serious. I'm just trying to share some of the things that I've learned from relicking guitars for almost 10 years now. And I thought that looking at what a production line relic guitar looks like might actually help you in how you're going to do this yourself, so you get the best result when you're doing your own relic work. So we're just gonna take a quick look at this guitar, and hopefully you get some good ideas. And then we're gonna look at some of the guitars that I've reliced, and hopefully you can agree with me that some of the decisions I've made are better than on this guitar, because I, surprise surprise, don't think this relic is super awesome, even though it's, probably a very good attempt for a production line guitar. And that's the difference. We have to keep that in mind. This is a production line guitar. This has not been reliced by hand. It has not been worked on by someone who has been sitting there thinking about every little scratch and ding. And so the result is something completely different than when you do this yourself. Okay, so here we have an overview and a little bit of close-up on the body. And this is very much the kind of guitar that from afar, let's see if I can zoom out a little bit, it looks actually really nice. If your eyes are never closer than this, then I think it might actually be really nice and work for you. But as we get closer, things that are maybe not that perfect will start to show up. Okay, so let's start up here. I would say that this is very much. I think that if they had done the relic just be something like this, and or maybe a little bit more, but definitely like half of this, and kept just the edge here being sanded away, I think that would have been nicer. Also, not all guitars, I would say, but most of these guitars, when they get sanded through there, will absorb a lot of sweat and grime, and that will turn the wood grayish up here, and this guitar doesn't have that. I would also like to see this line here be more faded. This sort of very soft line is right, but it should be more faded. We should have some sort of in-between sort of fade-out look, and not this contrast between where the paint is and where it's been faded off. So it should be some sort of in-between grid of the two. Because if you look down here, this is supposed to be the color shipping off, basically. And that's why they've made it look a little bit more jagged. But if you look really closely, which I hope you can do, it's not very sharp and there aren't that many angles. You should try to make this look a little bit more sharp. I would say if you think about maybe like a cracked egg or something, that's more like the way paint look when it is chipped off. And also there is no damage to the side, which you don't need to do a lot of damage, and I'm actually happy that, first of all, that they didn't do any damage, because that means that it will be easier for us to repaint this guitar if we choose to do so. I haven't decided what to do with this guitar yet, because I was thinking maybe you guys could help me out with that and tell me if you think I should repaint it or not, and what color, if I should. But this should be sharper, and there should be some damage and dings, and this is obviously just nothing more than some sort of print on or something. It feels, you can feel the edge a little bit, but it's not like the other guitars, which we're gonna look at soon. And you also have the same thing going around everywhere, and you don't have it on the other side. You see here how it's super clean on this edge here, but up here it is very jagged. And if we look around the body, the sides are basically clean all around, and it's basically just the front and the back that has relics on it. And the same thing goes here. You see the jagged pattern of paint that has been chipped off, but it doesn't look that sharp. It's hard for me to zoom into it without the camera going blurry like this, but it looks fairly nice from afar. But when you get closer, you can see that all these little jags are not very sharp. And that's the thing with all of them, basically. That one looks pretty good, but it's a lot of wear. And that's my next thing that I want to point out. If we zoom out again and we look at this, there's a lot of wear. We have basically no wear up here, which is pretty nice, because it doesn't necessarily have to be any wear up here, unless you've hit with your pick when you're playing up here, maybe a little bit. You could have, but most of the time you don't hit up here that much. You might have some paint chip off on the side right here because of standing up and playing with a strap on. And I think this is a bit too much and a bit too heavy, especially when you look at the rest of the guitar and it's not that damaged all around. So this is a bit too much. And then here we're getting down a lot of wear, and I'm not saying that it is wrong, but I just think it's a little bit too much. It could have been a little bit more subtle, and the contrast is very dark. And you have these lines here, and they look very squiggly. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but they all look basically the same. And I just feel like you could have one line that looks like that, and then maybe make them look a little bit different. And also, I don't really see why these lines would be here. Usually, you might have some scratches and things down here around where the controls are, and where you maybe, been hitting things when you've been playing, or maybe, down here by the jack, but I don't see that really happening. It's the same thing on the back here. Up here we have some lines, and as you can see, it's not that the paint has gotten a smack here and cracked and fallen off. It's too smooth. It doesn't look right, and it feels smooth and nice, so you can immediately feel that it's just the paint, and there is no real wear or damage. You have some of these small little chips. I think these chips here are nicer than on the front, actually, because they are a little bit more subtle and they're a little bit smaller. They feel a little bit more accidental. And down here we have the same sort of soft pattern, squiggly lines, no crack feeling of it. I hope you understand what I mean when I say crack, but yeah, it's sort of soft. You have the same thing here. Here you have the buckle rash, and I think the buckle rash looks pretty good, but it's just a little bit too soft. There is no discoloration, anything like that. And then you have the same thing, and here you can actually see sort of what I mean, because they shouldn't look the same because they're not made the same way. Buckle rash is, the buckle of your belt being scraped up, and it should be scraping into the guitar and pulling away the finish and pulling away some of the wood. But this is just smooth and nice, and it looks sort of soft. It has all the lines are a little bit on the soft side. And the same thing up here. It's not the same kind of wear. You have to think about what are hitting a place like this. and for it to get, for example, worn here, you would have to be like maybe wearing a denim jacket or something like that has been slowly been taken away the paint and the lacquer and just pulling it off. And you have the same thing down here. This is maybe the best example of what I mean. It just looks sort of blurry and blobby and smooshed like a stain or something. And then we have the back of the neck, which this neck feels really nice, and I'm gonna have a lot of fun playing this guitar. But it's, you know, it has a tiny bit of gray in it, and I hope you can see it. It's very subtle, which I like a lot. But if I film up here, you can see that that it's like the sort of yellowish finish, and then it gets a little bit of gray in it. And the thing is, the gray comes from the chemical reaction with your sweat. And so a lot of the lacquer needs to be pulled off and removed for that to happen. It's not something that happens because you sweat. It's something that happens because you move your arm up and down a lot. So yes, here it is. Now there are small imperfections in the finish. I don't know if you can see those dots. I'm trying to line this up in a way so that you can see them. But basically, the tiny little dots in the finish, sort of like some sort of orange peel. And that's why I think this guitar is the way it is and looks the way it does. So this is a really nice guitar, actually. I think it plays really well. Even though I don't have any pickups and I can't talk about the sound of it, I really like it. I think this plays a lot nicer than a lot of guitars in about its same price range. And that's the reason why I think it's painted the way it is. I think this is an easy way to get away with a poor finish job. This guitar has a relic job, not because it's for people who love relic guitars and want a cool Telecaster that looks old. It's because they're getting away with making a guitar that isn't painted very good and still making something that is awesome. And the thing is, if you don't have to spend that much time on painting something and making it look nice, you can sell it cheaper than you would if you had to spend twice the amount of making the guitar on painting it well. I know that this might sound weird, but I think this is how they've gotten the quality down to the price range of this guitar, because it's just so much nicer than I think a guitar in that 400 or 300 euro price range is supposed to be, give or take, depending on if you're buying it secondhand or not. But yeah, I just feel like it's a little bit too nice, and all the work when it comes to the fit and finish is in the neck. If you could buy just the neck, you would get a really good neck. And so I think the paint job is the way it is because they are cutting corners. But if you can find one of these secondhand and you don't mind the look of it and you just want a guitar that plays really well, I think this could be really cool. And if you want me to, I could show you tiny little steps you could take to make this guitar look more authentic, or whatever you want to call it, before we decide what to do with the paint or if we're going to repaint it or not. Just because I have some steps that I've been taking for my own relic work that I could apply to this guitar without too much work. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see that, because it could be a lot of fun. And also, if you think I should repaint the guitar and make it look like a new guitar, or make it look like a new guitar and then relic it again, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, I think you sort of get the idea. I've talked a little bit about things. There are more points to point out, which we're going to go into now, because I'm going to show you one of my guitars that I've reliced, and I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about my thought process behind relicking, and hopefully it will help you. Not overly impressed with this guitar, at least not the body and the finish work. Making a high gloss guitar that has a perfect flat surface and has this mirror-like shine to it is a lot of work. It takes a lot of hours and a lot of hard work to do, and so making a satin finished guitar that has some small defaults in the finish and you hide it behind the fact that it's relic, even though it's not really relic in my opinion, I think is a very easy way to go. And I know people who do relic guitars because they think it's a way to get away with a bad finish job, and I am not blaming anyone. I've myself done it sometimes. You build a guitar and you finish it and there are mistakes and you don't have the resources to fix them, And so you go with a relic job, but at least you can do a good relic job. You can at least, instead of saying, oh well, it's relic, and trying to, make that a feature, you could actually go in and nerd out on the relic, and that's the issue I feel. You can really nerd in on the relicking, and they just haven't done that. Now we're going to take a look at my guitar, and hopefully you're going to like it. Okay, so here is the guitar that I relicked at the end of last year, and hopefully you can see that I've thought into my wear pattern. For example, up here you can see I have a lot less of the relic up here, and you can see that I have different colors and blends. Up here is where the sweat has been going in, or the sweat, because it's obviously not real, it's just some vinegar with some rust in it. And here is some different stains, and the same thing here, a little bit of sweat from a hand, or rust, water, and some stains. And I've been trying to make it look authentic. I have a bunch of scratches here, and some of them are not very deep and some of them are really deep, and you can really feel a texture here when you move your hand over this. And here you can also see some jagged edges, and the pattern and the edges and the way it blends all together in a different ways with a bunch of gunk is making a totally different thing out of it. And the same thing if you go back up here, this is very much faded and blended and a very soft edge, while here it's really jagged and finish and wood has been pulled away, because this is supposed to be a pick that has been basically digging in. And the same thing here on this edge, you have some scratches and dings and some actual like wear and tear, and you can see some grime and different colorations in it. I don't know how well I can show you, but there's like 3 or 4 different colors, and there's like a lot of different thickness of the paint and grime. And if you go down like here, you can see that this is different, this is more jagged, it has a difference to it, it doesn't all look the same. And you can also, hopefully you can see that I have a lot less. I feel like I have a lot of relic on this guitar, but it's not as much, and it's just a tiny little bit here and there. And if I go up and you see the entire body again, you can see that it's basically like a little up here, a little there, small little divots here and there, but not at all the same amount. And the same thing if we look at the back, we have a little up here, down here is a little bit of wear, and then in the middle there's some buckle rash. And if we look closely, we can see here how it's been like pulled apart and it's been worn off, and the wood is grimy, but then it's also not grimy, so it has some different textures and colorations. And then we get down here and it's basically just a bit of fade, and here we have some real dig-ins. You can really feel the dig-ins, and I mean obviously you can't because you're watching a video, but my finger is not just going over nothing, it's actually there. And the same thing here, we have a little bit of more rounder, softer here, and it goes down here and it becomes a little bit more jagged. There's difference in them. Some of them are because the story of the guitar, basically you have to make sort of like a story. Same thing with the neck, you have some areas where it's a little bit more, maybe something hit it, and then finish has been pulled away and the gray sweaty gunkiness has shown up. And the same thing goes with the headstock. You have some little dings and hits, and it's a little bit damaged and imperfect. Okay, so here you have the 2 guitars, and hopefully you agree with me that there is more to it than just a pattern or something like that. I'm not trying to say anything bad about this guitar, I really am not. If you have this guitar and you like it, I like it too, but I can see that there are corners that have been cut. And I think that if you are doing relic guitars because you can't get, a really good finish, then I can totally understand that. That's in some ways how I got into relicking guitars as well. But the thing is, that doesn't mean that you should be lazy or that you should just be like, oh well, I just hit the guitar against something. Because even if you don't think that maybe, for example, a Fender Custom Shop guitar is worth the money, they do put a lot of work into the relic. I know that they do. You have to put a lot of work into the relic to get it to look good, make it look like it's actually realistic or an old guitar. You don't have to agree with me that this looks better or that this looks old. I didn't make this guitar for anyone else than myself, and the only thing that is important is that I like it, and I do. There is definitely more to making a relic guitar than just a failed attempt at doing a good spray job. And that's what I think this is. I think this is trying to hit a certain price point and, you know, being a good competitor and making something that is really cool. And it is definitely a really cool guitar. And I know for a fact that once I put pickups into it, it's gonna sound awesome. But anyway, that's the end of the video. I hope this was helpful in some way or interesting, and that you learned something. If you have any questions or you want to talk about the guitars with me, do so in the comments below. And also, let me know if you think I should repaint the guitar, because I can definitely do something like that, or if I should just show you how to like spruce this relic up a little bit so it becomes a little bit more nice, I suppose is what you could call it, maybe, or maybe a little bit more authentic. You decide what words you want to use. I am gonna put in a bridge pickup next in this guitar so that I can play it, because I have a bare knuckle pickup lying around in a spare jar, and I just feel like it's a waste to not put it in something, and since I have this Telecaster I might as well use it. So I'm gonna make some sort of video showing you how to put in a pickup. If you don't know how to do that, you could talk to me and let me know what kind of questions you have about that so that I can customize that video for you. But anyway, until next time, stay awesome and cool, you know, like you're always supposed to do, and go and relic a guitar. Even if relic guitars are not really your thing, you're gonna like to relic guitars because it's a lot of fun. You get to make up your own story and like a lifespan of a guitar, and you get to sit and be really nerdy about details like, ooh, maybe someone hit the guitar player with a bottle on stage because their song was really bad, and a piece of glass maybe like scratched the surface or something like that. You get to, you know, nerd out, and it's actually a lot of fun. I feel like being a good storyteller is a skill that is awesome when it comes to relic guitars, and you get to do that, so it's a lot of fun.